This is Gemara Chulin Daf, Tes Vav, and we're holding on Tes Vav and Aleph. We're 3 lines from the top as we continue trying to find this Shita that was said in the name of Rav, which was what? The Mishnah on the top of Yudal and Aleph taught us that if someone shechs on Shabbos, Avadatin is a Darais or Yom Kippurim, but the meat is not treif, the meat is kosher. But said the Gemara, the meat is kosher, but you can't eat it on Shabbos. You can only eat it after Shabbos. And the Gemara said, whose sheet does this you can't eat on Shabbos? So we spent a whole day, a whole daf Yudalit saying it's Rav Yehuda, and we were looking for which Rav Yehuda. Now says the Gemara, Ella Amar Rav Ashi, 4 lines on the top, Tesvav and Aleph. You know who it is? It's Rav Yehuda de Mevashalu. We're continuing our journey in Mesechah Shabbos. This actually is, believe it or not, in Mesechus Bava Kama as well. Says the Gemara, Rav Meir says, what happens if someone's over bishul on Shabbos? Very famous. Machlokes Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda, Klabe Meiser Shabbos. What do we do if someone was over an Isser of bishul on Shabbos? Rav Meir says, if it was done b'shagi, you could eat it, but not if it was on purpose. Rav Yehuda Omer, b'shagi, then you can eat Yachal Motzei Shabbos. B'meizid, lo yechal alamis. V'chlas Omer, b'shagi Yachal Motzei Shabbos la'achirim. Other people will eat after Shabbos, lo yelai, but not you. B'meizid, lo yechal alamis. You can never eat a lo yelai, but lo yachilim. V'nukma. And we established that what is this machlekes Rav Rabbi Yehuda and Vichlan Asamler? B'meizid, says the Gemara, v'nukma b'meizid, v'Rabbi Meir. So why do we not say, so we think that this 3-way machlekes Rav Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Vichlan Asamler, this is whom Rav is quoting when he says the meat cannot be eaten on Shabbos. We think it's Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda says, b'shoigeg, eat it on Motzei Shabbos. So that's going to be our sheet. Responds the Gemara, v'nukma b'meizid. Maybe it's talk. Maybe when Rav said you can't eat the meat till after Shabbos, so in a case if someone did a b'meizid, and it sheet is Rabbi Meir. Says the Gemara, look at lo sakataytach. Don't think that. Why? Tiktani dimid Yom Kippurim, because the Mishnah equated Shabbos and Yom Kippur. Ma Yom Kippurim lo shana shayib lo shana meizid lo ya'achel. By Yom Kippurim, there's no difference whether it's b'shagi or meizid. You cannot eat it. Why not? Don't make a mistake. Because it's Yom Kippur, you can't eat Yom Kippur. Says the Gemara. 1 second. So what are you telling me now? You're telling me that when Rav Chibar the name of Rad said that if someone shechted this animal on Shabbos, it's not treif, but it can't be eaten until after Shabbos. Is she does Rav Yehuda and if it was on b'shagig? Really? Can you say that 15 lines down? The first one line is la. The Mishnah said you're mischayiv and you're chayiv. The kares, you're chayiv the death penalty. 1 second. That's only if it's done b'meizid. If it's done b'shoigeg, that's not true. Says the Gemara, Chikam Arafalpi dim b'meizid mischayiv v'nashayu. Hachad b'shoigeg shchitas like a sheira. You have to stup that into the Mishnah, but that could be how you would read the Mishnah, and this is going to be the Rav Yehuda that would hold of such a din. Why don't we say the Mishnah like Rav Yochanan Asandler, the Amar who said you cannot eat it till after Shabbos? Says the Gemara, Rav Yochanan Asandler kamiflig b'motzai Shabbos la'acherim v'loy loy. Yochanan Asandler really is arguing klape motzai Shabbos that it's mutter to other people, but not for the person himself. Tana di Don said what? Shchitas like sheira katani lashon alav v'shlacherim. He said it's kosher. Didn't say it's only kosher for other people. He said it's kosher. So it's not going to work with Rav Yochanan HaSandler. It must be Rabbi Yehuda. And after a blot and a half, we find that who is the shita of our Mishnah? It's going to be Rabbi Yehuda. B'shageg, you have to shtup in that word in the Mishnah. Not such a geshmaka reading, but it's going to be Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara. Tanakamei te Rav. We learned in a Mishnah in the name of Rav. Mavashal b'Shabbos. If someone cooks on Shabbos, Hamavashal b'Shabbos. Someone cooks on Shabbos b'Shagi yochel b'meizid lo yochel umashtik le Rav. And Rav said he should be quiet. My time. So the kash of the Gemara is this is going to be Shitas Rav like this Rav Yehuda, but Rav was not happy with this whole halacha. Says the Gemara, my time mashatikle. Why did Rav say he should be quiet? If you're going to tell me we should make a svir like Rav Yehuda, because he held like Rav Yehuda, Vitani lay Tani Tana Kira Meir. Again, when it was Tani Kamei de Rav, it just was the blanket statement of Hamavashal b'Shabbos b'Shogeg eat b'Meiz lo yachol. Didn't have any clarification. So why did Rav say to be quiet? If it's because they taught it to him like Rav Meir and here like Rav Yehuda, Misham the sphere like Rav Yehuda, because he held like Rav Yehuda, man de tani Rav Meir mishatikle. That's not nice. Says the Gemara. Okay, you hold like Rav Yehuda, I get it. But if someone teaches you something named Rav Meir, you tell him to be quiet. That can't be what happened over there. And furthermore, misav like Rav Yehuda, but really does Rav himself hold like Rav Yehuda? Amar Rav Chanan bar Ami ki mari lehu Rav latalmidei mari lehu ki Rabbi Meir. He said over, you know who Rav holds like? He holds like Rav Meir v'chidarsh b'pirka. That's what he told his talmidim in public. Darish Rav Yehuda misham ameratzim. He only darshan like Rav Yehuda in public because he was nervous. But be'etzim, you know who Rav really held like? Rav really held like Rav Meir. Says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me, Tana Bepirka, Tana Kamei, maybe it was in public that they taught like Rav Meir, and that's why Rav said to be quiet. Now the whole story is starting to make sense. Rav said to be quiet because Rav held you shouldn't paskin like Rav Meir in public. Does everyone listen to the teacher of Braisa? They listen to the Amoraim. So why is he so worried about someone who gets up in public and says something? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Tana Sheichet, Tana Kamei de Rav. The one that was read over that Braisa in the name of Rav said it, one regarding someone who shechted. He did not say anything about one who was mivashel. So what did he say? He said as follows. Amar lei. Rav heard this. He says, "My taitzach. What are you talking about? Rav Meir? You think you go with Rav Meir? If yeah, the whole yesod of Rav Meir that you're allowed to eat it is only because the meat was shechted before Shabbos. He cooked it beisr on Shabbos, but it was raw. There was episode usage. He could be lachos. He could chew it before Shabbos. But said Rav avol sheichet in rayu lachos loy. But shechting it, which doesn't have any usage, even Rav Meir will not allow you to eat the food on Shabbos. Frakti Gemara. But our Mishnah says the din about shchita. Now we go full circle. That what? Asura b'achila, 2 lines on the bottom. And those in the base of just said, which Rav is this? I mean, whom is Rav going with when he says you can eat it after Shabbos? Rav Yehuda. Harameir Shari. Why are you telling me it's Rav Yehuda? Rameir says it is mutter. So the whole story now falls apart. The whole cookie's crumbling. Says the Gemara. You're right. You're right, Rameir says you're allowed to eat it, but ki shari Rameir, when did Rameir say you're allowed to eat it as we turn over to Tezvav Amid Beis? Kigoyin, for example, there was a chayil mibayim, and therefore the animal was not muksa, because there was a potential during the day that you knew that maybe this animal was going to need to be shechted on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, let's flip it around. If that is true, my time to Rav Yehuda the Aser. Right? Rav Yehuda saying it's Aser then. If there was a chayla and it wasn't muksa, everything is good. So we have this middle level case that we had a chayla, and therefore there was a potential the animal was going to want to be shechted. But then the chayla got better on Shabbos, and now it's also to do the shechita. And therefore that specific, very small, nuanced case is where we have a machlekes Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda, whether if now you go b'shagi and do a shechita, can you eat that meat? But it's not that it was a muksa, because when Shabbos began, there was a chayla. So we now know who Rav goes like. We now understand that why did Rav tell the person to be quiet was because he was saying Rameir Berabim incorrectly. Why? Because he thought that Rameir would also apply to Shechita, not only to, and it really only applies to Bishul. Says the Gemara, 3 lines from the top. Tezvav and basically Adam Rav Acha bar Adam Rav. V'ami Lama Rav Yitzchak bar Adam Rav. HaSheich l'chayla b'Shabbos asur lebari. So in Shechs Shabbos for a chayla, bari is not allowed to eat it. Hamevash l'chayla b'Shabbos is mutter lebari. My time, why is there a chiluk between bishul and shchita? You know why? For the reason we just said. One is fit to be chewed, and therefore it's not muksa, and one is not, therefore it is muksa. Amar Papa, Pamisha Sheikh and Motor, Kiyon Shayla Khayla Mebayim, Mavashal Asigon Shikatas Light, Talas, when you cut down a gourd, and this happens to be one of the more complicated sugyas, Klape, when you do something on Shabbos for a Khayla, what is the status of it for the Bari? Says the Gemara, wrapping up the last 2 blat, Rav Dimin Hardayal Sheikh L'Chayla B'Shabbos Motor L'Bari, Ba'umsa, the Bari is allowed to chew the raw meat. My time, came the efshar l'chzayis basar b'loy shchita, because it's efshar for chzayis basar without shechting the animal, and therefore kika shachid. Therefore, when it's shechted, adaita the chayla kashachid. Why are you doing it? You're clearly doing it for the chayla. Mavashal l'chayla b'shabbos l'bari. Why? Because the good old-fashioned gezerah, we always have to be worried that what are you going to do? You're going to add in extra shema yarbe bishviloi, an incredible gezerah to Rabbanan. We know this gezerah also by Amir La'akum. Similarly, says the Mishnah, Hashoichet b'magol yad. If someone shechs with a hand sickle, bitzur with a sharpened piece of rock, ubekana with a reed, shechitasaik sheu. Hakol sheichtin, says the Mishnah, all shechita leilam sheichtin, and we always shecht. Uba kol sheichtin, and with anything we shecht, chutz, mi magol kotzir, v'megira, v'shinayim, v'tzipirin, mibnei shehein, chonkin, except with a sickle for harvesting, with a saw, an animal tooth, or a nail. Why these items? No, because these are items that strangle, rather they cut. These are items that are serrated. These are items that do not cut cleanly, and therefore they cannot be used for shchita. I apologize. I hope the background change didn't mess with anyone's brains. Either way, says the Gemara, Hashaychit, Diavin lechatchila loi. The Mishnah says Hashaychit, applying, as we saw back from the first Mishnah of the Masechta. What does Hashaychit apply? It's b'diavin. Says the Gemara, Kisa, I understand Magal Yad, you might come to use with the other side, which is the same sickle. One side is smooth, the other side is serrated. So I understand why you're going to tell me not to use it. However, Elotzur Vikana, Lechatchila Loi, Lotzur Nekana, a rock or a reed, it should even be lechatchila. V'reminu, and I'll prove it to you. I'll ask you a stira. Ba'kol sheichtin. The Mishnah continued and said that with anything you could shech. Bein betzur, excuse me, this is a brisa. With anything you could shech, bein betzur, bein b'chuz, bein b'krum, shel kana. And that brisa clearly is indicating even lechatchila. Says Gemara Lokasha, kan betolush, kan b'mit chubur. The Brisa says, when can you, shecht with these items when they're not attached to the ground anymore, the reed, etc. When is our Mishnah talking about? Our Mishnah is talking about when they're still attached to the ground. The Amar Rav Kana, Sheichet b'mechuber lekarka, Rabbi Pasol, v'Rav Chia machshir. Ad kan lo kamachshir Rav Chia. When did Rav Chia say it's kasha elabediyah v'havlechatchila loy? Says the Gemara b'mayu kimta. This is a very funny thing. You're being mukim the Mishnah kid Rav Chia udiyavad. That's how you're saying the Mishnah. But then, that which you learned in a Brisa, there's another Brisa. And the Brisa says you can do shchita with anything. Whether the knife is above and the animal is below. So who's that Brisa going to be like? Because that Brisa clearly indicates everything is l'chatchila mani. Loi Rabbi v'lo Rav Chia. Rav Chia diavin l'chatchila loi. Any Rabbi diavin ami loi. So very good. You're explaining one Brisa, but now we have another Brisa. Doesn't work out. Says the Gemara, lo'ilam Rav Chia v'afil l'chatchila v'ayda kamifliki b'diavad. So then why lamaisa does the Brisa teach us the case of b'diavad? And similarly our Mishnah, l'diacha koichai de Rabbi, brings out the chiddush of Rabbi. Brings out the chiddush of Rabbi that if you use something attached, it's going to be puzzle even b'diavad. Says Gemara, 1 second. Who's going to be the din of the Mishnah? Loi Rebbe, v'lo Reb Chia, I Reb Chia afilu lechatchila. I Rebbe, de'avinami loi. Because in our Mishnah, says the Gemara, the Mishnah said, Nacham ala sheichet, which is only b'diavad. It can't be Reb Chia. Why? Because then it should be even lechatchila, and if you're going to say it's Rebbe, it will not work even b'diavad. It says more la'ilam. I'll tell you, it's Reb Chia. Afilu lechatchila, it is Reb lechatchila. Mastis like Tani Hashoichet is Rebbe. Kasha Rebbe ad Rebbe. So we have a stira. Lo kasha. Now we can all understand the teretz. Kam l'chuber meikara, kam betalosh l'b'sayv chibroi. Meaning, once we know that there's a chilik, that's what I meant. We can anticipate it. Once we know that there's a chilik between mechuber and talosh, says the Gemara, I'll make another chilik. Is when it's talosh l'b'sayv chibroi and became attached. When it's mechuber the whole time, that's when Rabbi says it's possible in Gansin. But when it was talosh, it was detached, and now it became attached back to the ground. That's when Rabbi says it's going to be kosher b'diavad. So now we wrap up today's shir with this whole chilik between mechuber and talosh. Says the Gemara 6 lines from the bottom. Where do we know this differentiation? Tanya says the Braisa. If shecht with a wheel, no, it's a second by kaisel. If you stuck a knife into the wall of a shachat and you used it for shchita, hayatzur yotzim min kaisel. If there is a rock that protrudes from the wall, or you have a reed that comes up on its own v'shachat by shchitasai psula. So kashan hadadi. So what's going on? Is a rock, is a reed, kosher or not? What's going on? The brisa seemingly is a stira minei ubei. Kashan hadadi as we turn over to Tezayin and Aleph. So says the Gemara, this is going to be our Mekar, no stira at all. Elav shma mina, shiny bein mechuber Mekar l'tal shul b'sayv chibroi shma mina. That's going to be the differentiation. And we'll pick it up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.